Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being with us. Always a pleasure to see you, of course. Let me start with the comment you made actually yesterday in response to a question when you talked about the issue that these are only estimates. You suggested I should know that, which of course I do. And that supplementary estimates during the year would continue to, potentially feed additional funds to particular programs. And of course, specifically, I'm talking about the Agricultural Food Safety Biosecurity Risk Management Program, which, according to these estimates, shows a 32% reduction. Your response yesterday was, to me, the question period was, well, don't worry about that. We've got additional estimates coming and we'll add money to that. But let me put that in the context of your colleague at the Cabinet table, the Minister for the Treasury Board. And if I could use a colloquial term, I believe he's the guy with the checkbook. And he actually said that these estimates would be a harbinger of things to come. Now, I looked up the word harbinger because it's a pretty big word. So I looked it up, and it's a sense of this is what will probably be coming down the road. You should be prepared for this. So this isn't prepared for more, Minister. Your colleague at the Cabinet table, the gentleman with the checkbook, is saying be prepared for less, not more. So in light of your response to me yesterday in question period when you said be prepared for more, Mr. Allen, your colleague is actually telling you be prepared for less. So I guess I would ask you, Minister, are you right and Minister Clement wrong, or is Minister Clement right and he just hasn't told you yet that you're not going to get more?
Nicely framed.
Because I would hate to say you're wrong, Minister. I never ever say that. But he may not have told you that yet.
Nicely framed, Mr. Allen. As usual, you missed the obvious. In this case, we're both right. Mr. Clement is following through, as is Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, as well as CFIA, looking for efficiencies. We're doing that. We're not ashamed to say that we have found some good numbers, and we're moving forward in that vein. But when it comes to the biosecurity piece that you led off with, there will certainly be more investments to come in that particular relationship. What's missing in that point right now, as is in many of the columns that you look at on the main estimates, are the negotiations that are ongoing with the provinces. In the case of biosecurity, I can't forecast which provinces are going to sign on to what extent. But I know from past experience and knowing my provincial colleagues and territorial colleagues that biosecurity is a cornerstone of a lot of what we're moving forward on. So I look forward to finishing those bilaterals, as I said, in the coming days, and being able to put that number for you probably in sub-8.
And as you know, of course, I look very forward to that additional monies back in that additional program, since it's of critical importance based on what we lived through last fall, which was the largest meat recall in Canadian history. A more recent example in the last few weeks where we've seen a number of cases of E. coli in ground beef. And of course, which leads me to my next question around the issue of traceability, a program that has been suggested by both levels of government, provincial and federal, and as well as the industry, that we need to actually get forward on. Now, there were some commitments made that we would get things done by 2011. We're now headed into 2013. It would seem that we're not nearly as far along as we should be in this particular program. And I raised that not in the context that we're actually affected by the outbreak in the EU, where we actually see meatballs that have horse meat in it. Now, let me be unequivocal. That is not here.
No.
Now, let me, to be fair, Minister, let me be unequivocal. Not here in this country at all. I simply reference that in the sense of it's not an unhealthy thing necessarily. You're just getting the wrong product, and how we need traceability so that when we do the things in this country, internally for our own market and Canadians, and externally for those who we're trading with, because as you pointed out, and I agree with you, by the way, that we export a great amount of product externally, that traceability becomes an intrinsic piece of this, and it seems to me we've dropped the ball to a certain degree. We started well. It seems as if we've taken our eye off that goal line. So perhaps you could help me understand and point me in a direction where we can see some funding to get back on track with that sense of traceability, because we're now seeing in a global sense, and as you articulate, the food supply system is getting more global every week. That being the case, it seems to me this ought to be near the top of our agenda when it comes to the issue of product. It's not necessarily only just safety. It is about a consumer knowing when I buy a product, I know what it is. Traceability actually does two things in my view. It's a safety aspect, absolutely, unequivocally. The other piece is I know what I get when I actually look at the label and it says this is what it is. Unlike our colleagues in Europe who we're trying to actually have a trade deal with, who are buying meatballs and finding out, oops, maybe it's not. I mean, when IKEA is selling you horse meat meatballs, it's a bit difficult, it seems now. That's their issue. Let them sort it out, but let's not get there.
Well, the one thing I agree with that you're saying there, Mr. Allen, is this is critical importance. And I guess then I'm puzzled by the fact that your party constantly votes against funding for these types of issues. I know you rail against an omnibus budget bill, and that's your right to do that, but when we get into the supplemental estimates, they're very specific. So I'd be hopeful that you'd be able to support those when we bring that forward on the biosecurity piece, because traceability, of course, is a very large part of that. We take traceability very seriously, as do our provincial counterparts and the industry as a whole. We're well on our way. For a number of years, we were starting to slide. We were getting behind the Americans and the Australians when it comes to traceability. I'm happy to tell you that's no longer the case. We have the vast majority of our product now traced. We did analyze and assess during the XL recall that there was a gap between the wholesale and the retail side. There's great barcoded traceability on the retail side. There's great biosecurity from the farm gate right up through to when it goes into that slaughter capacity. There's a bit of a hole there that we need to put a lot more emphasis on. And we'll be doing that. We'll be addressing that as we move forward, and I'm looking forward to that, to the report on the XL situation. But I agree with you that it is of critical importance. That's why we've pushed very hard and spent a significant amount of money to do that. There's a new property being developed in Guelph, Barcode of Life. The federal government has invested some $84 million in that procedure. That lets you then assess exactly what's in this and that. I mean, it's very hard to distinguish certain fish from each other. It's very hard, as you rightly point out, when it's hamburger on the shelf, what all's in there. With that particular procedure, they can identify every part and piece, right down to the molecular almost. So it's some exciting things happening in Canada simply because we've embraced traceability. We've drawn in that type of investment, as I said, that Barcode of Life in Guelph, and I'm sure Mr. Valerian is well informed on that issue.
Thank you.